Tom, how significant is the concern that U.S. air defense may not be able to intercept many of these Iranian drones?
It is significant and it is growing, Pam. Wolf, let's take a look at what the U.S. is doing right now. They're fielding a previously unused military asset. I'm going to show you a life-size model that we bring into our virtual studio here. This is the Lucas drone, low-cost unmanned combat attack system. It is, as you can see, about 10 feet long, about an 8-foot wingspan. It weighs about 180 pounds. It's powered by a propeller back there, which means very low heat signature, hard to track, and up front it can carry about 40 pounds of high explosives. It is also, interestingly, based upon a clone of an Iranian drone, the Shahed 136 Kamikaze. The Iranians have been working on this for years. The U.S. got a hold of one. They had engineers take it apart and say, let's build a better version of it. That's what they have done. And yet the Iranians continue to rely on this and many other types of drones. But this one in particular, they rely on for several reasons. One, compared to a missile, which requires a great big launch platform that can be targeted and taken out, and then the missiles are no longer useful. This can be launched from the back of a truck, from the middle of a field, from a boat, compared to a missile, which requires a big production facility, which also can be targeted and destroyed. These can be made in many covert locations all over that are hard to track down. And compared to a missile, which will cost at least $1 million, sometimes several million, this is cheap, only about $20,000 per unit. So when we look at these maps out here where you see places where drones have hit or missiles have hit, every time a drone is hit, it doesn't necessarily mean just one drone was launched there. Instead, squadrons of things are launched. They send many of them in precisely because of what you said at the top, Wolf. Because if you have a system out there that can't stop all of them, you only need 10% to get through to do a tremendous amount of damage, as we have been seeing in these videos in various places. One of the concerns here is also that the cost of the systems to stop these is higher than the cost of the drones. In many ways, military analysts say the Iranians have been preparing for many years for just this type of conflict. So, though they didn't want to have a war necessarily, now that the war has come to it, their use of drones is forcing the U.S. to fight a type of battle that the Iranians would prefer, even as the U.S. tries to turn that weapon back against them.
What we're seeing play out here is essentially a war of attrition. It's the ability of the Iranians to launch missiles and drones versus the supply of U.S. and Israeli interceptors that can knock them out. Now, President Trump said a couple of days ago, and rather absurdly, that there's an unlimited supply of missiles and interceptors and munitions, and that's simply not the case. But there are some signs that the Iranians had a lot of capabilities, but it's definitely being degraded. I mean, on the first day, they launched 350 missiles. On the second day, 175. On the third, it looks like about 125, and only 50 yesterday. So there's definite signs that they're being degraded. The other thing that they're working on is the launchers, the missile launchers. They started the war with perhaps 450. The IDF is claiming perhaps at least half of them have been knocked out. But they still have a lot of drones, a lot of missiles. The drones can be very, very dangerous, and we've seen play out in Ukraine. Yeah. Of course, the Iranians are providing a lot of drones to the Russians, so it's probably going to evolve into a war of attrition. The ability of the Iranians to continue to mount attacks using their missiles, what's left of them, and their drones, and the United States racing against time to try to knock out their capabilities to deliver those munitions.
Two sources have also told CNN that at least one of America's Gulf allies is already running low on crucial interceptor munitions. Let's bring in Haley Britsky, joining us live again out of Washington. So one of the issues, Haley, with these Shahed attack drones that Iran is using is that they're designed to fly low and slow, which allows them essentially to evade air defenses. Walk us through it and walk us through what sort of options the U.S. has to be able to counter that.
Yeah, so like you said, these can sometimes evade air defenses a little bit easier than Iran's ballistic missiles, and we know that attack drones are frequently used by Iran and its proxies throughout the region. We've seen them target U.S. forces for quite a while now. And Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Chairman of the Joint Staff General Kane, apparently telling lawmakers, according to these sources, that kind of downplaying the concerns about this, but at the same time saying that they likely would not be able to catch all of them because Iran has so many of them. And I really have to iterate here how big of a deal that is, how striking of an admission that is, given the resources, the money that the U.S. has.
Qatar saying an Iranian ballistic missile has struck Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. That is the largest military installation for the United States in the entire Middle East. And it comes as a new CNN investigation is now looking specifically at the American targets hit so far by Iranian strikes, every single one of them. Tamara Kliblawi is out front.
Satellite imagery showing the extent of the damage to U.S. military facilities across Gulf Arab countries is starting to emerge, part of Iran's furious response to an Israeli-American campaign that decimated its leadership. At least 9 U.S. military positions have been hit in less than 48 hours. These are relatively close targets. They're much nearer to Iran than its usual target, Israel. That proximity may give Iran's missiles and drones a better chance of hitting their targets. This is the port of Shuaiba, where just after 9 a.m. on Sunday morning, an Iranian strike set a makeshift U.S. operations center at the civilian port ablaze. 6 American service members were killed in the attack. You can see smoke rising from the fire, the blown-out 3-wide trailer blackened on the inside. There are few signs of fortification. In another attack, a drone, this appears to be the Arash 2, crashes into U.S. positions in Camp Buring. A building severely damaged. American helicopters parked inside the base were nearly hit. In Bahrain, a Shahid attack drone flies into the base that hosts the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet, one of the largest American naval formations in the world. It looks alarmingly defenseless. The drone hits one satellite communication terminal, clearly seen here. But the scale of the damage is more obvious here, warehouses and other buildings damaged. And another satellite communication terminal destroyed in a separate attack. We see this pattern of targeting throughout the region. At least 5 satellite communication terminals were destroyed. It points to a possible Iranian effort to cut US bases off from the outside world. Iran used an unprecedented barrage of missiles and drones. US Patriot missiles and other multi-billion-dollar air defense systems shot most of these out of the sky. But the ones that got through were enough to puncture the veil of security around oil-rich Gulf Arab states and the heart of America's security infrastructure in the Middle East. Now, the question is just how long can Iran sustain these attacks? That depends on how big their stockpiles of missiles and drones are, which is currently unknown. And really, Aaron, it comes down to how quickly can the US and Israel achieve their stated objective of obliterating the missiles. Until that happens, Iran has made it clear that in the aftermath of the killing of Ayatollah Khamenei, it plans to sow as much chaos as possible to US interests in the Middle East and beyond.
At the very top of the program, I mentioned the strike on Al Udeid that we are understanding has just happened, and that was from we understand, a ballistic missile from Iran. What's the significance of that, given that you've been there so much, but that this is the single largest military base in the region?
Well, the Qatari government has the obligation, in concert with the United States, agreements in place to protect the airspace. When I was there, and over the course of time, certainly there was a full integration of not only U.S. air defense capabilities and those that are possessed by the Qatarian government. In this case, over the course of time, maybe the U.S. presence there has decreased somewhat, and in Qatar, it has increased to a point that they now have primacy in terms of that mission set. That's the only thing I can assume right now, because for Iran to be able to target Al Udeid, first of all, it's a known location. They know where it is, so that's no mystery. Yep. But for it to get through, that's a legitimate concern.
And U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says all personnel are accounted for after a drone strike in a parking lot near the U.S. consulate in Dubai late last night. It is now 1 o'clock in the afternoon here. Paula Hancock's joining us from Dubai. And Paula, just let's get some reaction there. People have been extremely concerned, of course, about these attacks. They do tell us they, on the whole, feel safe, though. How is what is going on in Dubai and the broader picture of Iranian attacks on US military and, importantly, non-military facilities going down?
Well, Becky, we had heard from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard that they were expanding their targets. It was going to be American political centers hit as well, and we're certainly seeing that. As you mentioned there, the car park of the consulate in Dubai, close to where we are here now, there were no casualties because there was no one in the building. We know that the consulate at the embassy in Abu Dhabi, they'd cancelled all appointments up until March 4th, which is today. Clearly, that is going to be extended. And we're seeing embassies be...
Pois.
The massive oil producing facility here in Saudi Arabia. And of course, the concern for the Saudis is that their oil sector is potentially vulnerable. They're defending it, successfully defending it so far. But there is a risk, and they recognize this, that a strike on their oil facilities could put pressure on them to be dragged potentially into the war here, something that they are not inclined to do, and something that they are concerned about and have given Iran strong diplomatic signals not to do. You know, the option to respond if they are attacked remains an option. However, this is feeling to the Saudis as if it is an escalation of Iran's attacks going on. And I think the bigger picture that underscores there is that adds to the assessment here at the moment that Iran still has command and control capability and can escalate its targets, pick and choose, as it did a little over 24 hours ago, to send 4 drones successfully hitting the embassy here in the center of Riyadh, the US embassy, and not just the embassy building itself, but hitting the CIA station there. Fire damage, the extent of which we don't quite know yet.
Wow. E a guerra continua no Médio Oriente. Agora as coisas foram se escalando e o Irão conseguiu suceder-se, conseguiu com sucesso atingir algumas bases norte-americanas e pronto, está a fazer usar tudo o que tem para devolver. Estão aí de uma forma que é possível que a Arábia Saudita envolva-se, porque também atingiu uma refinaria de petróleo na Arábia Saudita. Acho que foi o drone ou alguma dessas bombas aí. E pronto, estamos a ver aí o mundo a acompanhar tudo isto aí e parece que as coisas ainda não acabou. Enquanto o Irão não ficar sem armas, vai continuar a lançar as bombas, apesar de terem dizimado quase todos os líderes, mas ainda continuam aí a fazer o máximo que podem para afligir os danos possíveis aos Estados Unidos e aos seus aliados, né? Catar, Dubai, todo Emirado Árabe, Arábia Saudita. Pronto. A Arábia Saudita sempre foram inimigos, então pronto, isso não vai me surpreender muito se houver ali um confronto também e se juntar mais aí à Arábia Saudita. Sim, o Irão é um ramo mais diferente do Islã, que é os xiitas, então são muito mais radicais do que os sunitas, que é todo o resto do mundo. Pronto, é continuar a acompanhar e inscreva-se aí no canal Volátil Mídia e estamos juntos.